Good evening, Guelph, and thanks for joining us. A strike erupted late Thursday evening outside Pearson International Airport. Channel 21 News brings you the latest footage and expert analysis. This was the scene late Thursday evening after 3 Air Canada workers were suspended for sarcastically applauding Canada's own Labour Minister, Lisa Raitt. As the strike escalated, Quebec City and Montreal workers walked out as well. This resulted in 88 cancelled and 53 delayed flights throughout the day.
To let everybody know, your brothers and sisters in Quebec City and Montreal walked out this morning as well. Return to work to get these flights out. We have a legal responsibility to do that.
Stick together, we're going to stand up for each other, and we're not going to be bullied anymore.
Employees were forced back to work after threats of fines and lawsuits from managers. As you can see, some employees stayed strong to ensure their voices were heard. We now bring you more up-to-date information from Air Canada and a special guest in Channel 21's own HR Report.
Thank you, Chris. And for today's HR report, we have special guest Kevin Blanchette, HR specialist, joining us today with a little more insightful information on the situation over at Air Canada.
Well, the first problem I can see with the situation over at Air Canada is that there's a lack of motivation.
What type of motivation are we looking at here, Kevin?
Well, there are two different types of motivation. The first being extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. First off, extrinsic motivation is motivation that an employee receives from the company outside of work hours. So a cash raise, cash bonus, fringe benefits like dental and eye care, and other types of benefits. However, extrinsic motivation is not for everybody. There are some employees that are better off to be intrinsically motivated. Now, intrinsic motivation is motivating the company or the employees inside of the company. So this means like helping them to have a higher level of job satisfaction. So they actually enjoy being there, they enjoy doing the work they do.
With 37 dismissed workers now returning to work after the outbreak of this illegal strike, how can Air Canada return and increase the morale of their employees?
Well, Eric, some of the ways that Air Canada can increase the morale of their employees is by looking at different ways in compensating them. So compensation systems are based most often on a point system. And the way that these point systems are found is by doing job analysis. So these job analyses are performed to help the employees feel that the system is procedurally fair.
How can you make a compensation system procedurally fair?
Well, for a compensation system to be procedurally fair, a large portion of it is to make the compensation system legally defensible.
And how would you make a compensation system legally defensible?
Well, there are 4 main sections to making sure that a compensation system is legally defensible. The first way is to make sure that the system is content valid, which is why the job analysis is performed, so that the employees know what they're being judged on and exactly why they're receiving these marks. The next way is to make sure that the compensation system is reliable. So for a compensation system to be reliable, if one employee does something, they have to be rewarded the same way as the person before them. Or if an employee is punished, they have to be punished for the same way as the employee that did the same thing before them, no more, no less. So next, the system has to be practical, meaning that the benefits have to be higher than the costs. If the costs are higher than the benefits, that means the compensation system is not practical. And finally, the evaluation system has to be free from bias. So the person doing the evaluations is usually trained in some way or another to help avoid these biases. A few of the biases they're trained for are the halo effect, the primacy effect, the recency effect, and the similar to me effect.
Could you elaborate on what these types of bias these are.
So the halo effect is when the person doing the evaluation sees or hears about one good thing that the person has done, the person that they're evaluating has done, and they let this influence their entire evaluation of the person.
Could that also go negatively?
Yes, it could also go negatively. So the primacy effect is when a person doing the motivating is influenced by the thoughts they have about a person that they interview or evaluate early on in the process, and use this as a guideline for evaluating the rest of their employees. The next bias that they're trained to avoid is the recency effect, meaning the person doing the motivating is more likely to remember somebody closer to the end of their evaluation process and give them higher marks or lower marks. And finally, the similar to me bias, where the person doing the evaluations looks at the person they're evaluating and says, hey, this person's like, they're close to me in a way, I like them, I'm going to give them a higher mark or a higher evaluation. So they would receive a higher compensation level. And if people saw this, they'd probably believe that the compensation system's procedurally unfair for all of the employees. And this would also be a compensation system that's not legally defensible.
Okay, Kevin, do you think Lisa Raitt was in the right or wrong when she made the decision to pass the bill not allowing Air Canada workers to strike during the collective bargaining and making the Air Canada company unable to lock out their employees?
Well, Eric, the answer to this question is one that comes up a lot in human resources. And the answer is that it depends. It depends which side of the situation you're looking at it from. For businesses like Air Canada, this is preventing an interruption in their service during a peak travel season. However, on the union side, this is stripping them of one of their most basic rights that a union is there to provide them.
All right, and that's all the time we have for today's HR Report. Kevin, thank you for being here today with us, and we wish you guys all the best. Now back to you, Chris.
Thank you for tuning in to Channel 21 News. We look forward to seeing you next week.